and came across this fella, for those that don't know him, Michael O'Brien, who's the head of the Victorian Liberals. Rumours circulating that he's only in power because the Liberal Party can't have a full meeting because of COVID restrictions, and that if they could, they'd probably give him the flick. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Um, so I was posting on Twitter, like I said, nothing too spicy either, and got blocked by the guy, which is kind of weird, personally. Like, I find it a little strange that the wannabe premier of the state can just like block you. um, but anyway, look, this is what I said. He said this was in response to he was replying to someone saying something along the lines of, all you do is criticize Dan Andrews, all you do is go through what he says and look for lies. And Michael's response was something along the lines of like, that's what an opposition's supposed to do. Or like, look up democracy, something like that, right? Something just so unbelievably simple. And I was just like, wow, this is the opposition leader. He has no idea what an opposition's actually meant to do. And so that's what I said. You know, let's not provide like an alternative kind of future for this state. Let's not talk about the things that we would like to do if we were in charge. No, no, no. What an opposition does is they just look at what the government does and they basically have to like react content to that. They just get on the news and they're like, what the government did was bad. End of story. Now, obviously, there's a place for that. Obviously, it's a very important role of the opposition, but I also think you're kidding yourself if you think that's all the opposition's meant to do. What I would have loved from the Victorian Liberals over the last 2 years at any stage is for them to say, what the government's doing is bad, here's what we would do instead. Because at least then you have something where you can say, all right, I may not like the way that the current crop of politicians are handling things. Here's what they would do if we voted for them instead. And I think that that's been lacking in general from the Liberal Party in Victoria. And so what I thought, I got an email from Michael, because you know can't block me off the email list, I guess, Mr. O'Brien. Uh, and it was his plan, right? His kind of like weird Trump esque sort of stuff, where it's like, I'm not gonna. We're not talking about making Victoria great again, but we are going to get it back to the top. Very important. um, so he kind of sent me through this list of stuff, and I thought I'll have a look through it and see if he actually proposes anything kind of positive in this, like what he would like to do if he was in charge. Which obviously is, of course, that's his job as the opposition leader. What would you do if you were running the show? So let's start at the start. And like from the first line, the first little couple paragraphs here, I think it really set for me immediately like what this is actually about. You know, the first little thing here, a positive statement. I'm like, sweet. Our future is Liberals and Nationals. Our future is Victorians. It's like, oh, really? You're like, you're putting the fact that you're a Liberal before the fact you're a Victorian. Like, that to me just speaks volumes about what Michael O'Brien is about, what the Victorian Liberals are about. The entire last 2 years for them is entirely a political exercise. It's got nothing to do with about what's best for the state, nothing about what they would like to do for the state. It's just about what they can do in a political sense to further the interests of the Liberal and National Party. So, you know, standard kind of COVID spiel, life's upside down, blah, blah, blah. Borders slammed shut, personal liberties stripped away. Now, this one I actually thought was interesting because they talk about personal liberties stripped away at the stroke of a Labor bureaucrat's pen. And yet we compare the situation that we find ourselves in now in Victoria to that in New South Wales, and we find that actually it's where almost exactly the same situation. So it's interesting that when Labor does it, it's a Labor bureaucrat's pen that is stripping away our freedoms. But when the Liberal Party in New South Wales do it, nothing to see here. Again, some like and like makes such a weird comparison. Okay, so drones policing their citizens' movements in Wuhan. In fact, here it's been worse. So we're looking at like an authoritarian dictatorship and saying, actually, guys, it's way worse here. So we've had a long lockdown. We're apparently no longer the sporting and cultural capital of the world. You know, everything's shut. We got all of it. World's most lockdown city. And I'm up to here and I'm like, okay, wasn't this meant to be a positive statement, a hopeful call to arms? All you've done so far is shit on where we are. That's all that's happened up till now. Just shitting, shitting, shitting. The most of any state in lockdown, shitting, shitting, shitting. We're still in lockdown, shitting, shitting. John Howard famously coined the phrase 5 minutes of economic sunshine to describe the very brief period between Labor's recession we had to have and the next round of Labor taxes and turmoil. So, like this, what's that got to do with anything? Like, John Howard's a federal prime minister. It's got nothing to do with the state. So, again, and this just harks back to that second line. It's got nothing to do with what's best for the state. It's got everything to do with being a liberal, being a national. We've had sunshine free, sunshine between our fifth and sixth lockdown. So any excuse for a liberal to bring up John Howard, they'll obviously take. Um, did you know John Howard also once said the word sunshine? Did you guys know that? Okay, so here we are. We're now like a third of the way down the page. We're finally talking about the future of the state. No plan. Okay. So this is what the Liberals and Nationals are going to do. What's going to happen for the next election? Victoria back on top. Make Victoria great again, guys. So they've held the Andrews Labor government to account. Now, to be fair, they have done that. Like every time there's been like an Andrews government has said something, done something, Michael O'Brien has been given his due in the media, his time in the sunshine. Did you know John Howard used the word sunshine once too? Michael O'Brien's been given his time in the sun to say his piece. In fact, now I don't know this. I think it would be relatively easy to find out. I would have to imagine that Michael O'Brien has had more airtime, more lines of print written about him and quoting him than any other opposition leader in Victorian history. It would have to be, he would have to be more than the next three combined, surely. So anyway, he's done that. Let's say he's held the government to account. Hotel quarantine, shitting, 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 shitting. Okay, here we go. Proposed alternatives, our plan. So vaccinations, well, that's the Victorian government's plan at the moment. We're behind New South Wales, which is true. They have also been given more Pfizer vaccines by the federal government. Keep in mind that the vaccination rollout is a federal government responsibility. Victoria is actually just helping to administer it, but it is a federal government problem. New South Wales delivered 300,000 rather, vaccinations through state-run hubs. Again, they have more supply of Pfizer than us. It's not surprising considering the hesitancy that we've seen around AstraZeneca that more people in places where they can get Pfizer will get Pfizer. So our plan is to speed up vaccinations. So let's see how they're going to do that. Oh, the Andrews government is spending too much money. It's spending too much money on advertising itself. That's so weird. I haven't seen any ads like talking about how good Dan Andrews is. Most of the ads that I've seen from the Victorian state government have been about get vaccinated, get tested, so on. So he wants to redirect advertising money from the Dan Andrews political campaign to getting Victorians vaccinated. They're going to open more centres, vaccination centres in towns and suburbs. That's great. Again, assuming you can get Pfizer, which again is the responsibility of the federal government. Let's open up bookings till the end of the year. Okay, I can actually get around that. Prioritize vaccinations for teachers, early childhood educators, and students. So again, entirely up to the federal government who they include in what stage of the rollout. Entirely up to them who they prioritize in the vaccine rollout. It's got nothing to do with the state government at all. Shitting about kids, and it actually, it's from a rhetoric point of view, it's interesting that the, I guess, line of attack that the Liberal Party's engaged in recently has been around the mental health side of things, and it's because it's valid. That's why. More calls to Kids Helpline, more calls to Lifeline, all of them doing record numbers. Yeah, it really is terrible. So what's their solution to it? Get kids back into school. Okay, how are you doing that? How are you doing that? by prioritizing kids getting vaccines. Well, kids aren't able to get vaccines at the moment on the advice of a target. And the federal government sets the priorities for who can get vaccinated. So even those 12 to 16-year-olds that have recently been approved, they're not part of the federal government's planned rollout for the vaccine. So get kids back to school. Again, how are you going to do it? Well, they're going to do it through rapid testing. They're going to introduce rapid testing. Now, I have to admit to my ignorance here. I don't know why we don't do rapid testing. I've heard some things about it being less accurate than like the standard test where you drive through, get the product, the nose, and so on. So far, almost halfway down the page, they've said two things that we can get behind. Issue rapid testing at schools, maybe, I think. That seems fine. And that people and children are really struggling with their mental health as a result of these lockdowns. Their plan for that is do stuff that they can't do, get the federal government to issue more Pfizer, and change the priorities for who can get vaccinated. That's their plan. More shitting, shit on bullying. The government's bullying people. They're threatening Victorians, crushing hope. Here we go. Here's the hope. COVID, it seems like COVID will never end, but I assure you it will. Thank you so much, Michael O'Brien. Straight back into it. We must learn to live with COVID. It's interesting that the Liberals all seem united on this front that we must live with COVID. If we look over to Western Australia, I wonder, Western Australia government, let's look up the Premier. It's probably a better idea. Premier Mark McGowan, what's his story? Is he Liberal? Is he Labor? It's interesting that that's like such hard information to find. I would have thought it'd be the first thing that came up. Mark McGowan, Labor. Okay, no surprise there. So, in the only state where they've successfully eradicated COVID, they're not saying, well, we need to learn to live with it. And yet, in the Victorian party rooms or the Liberal party rooms across the country, the line is the same. We must learn to live with this. Take our lives back. Okay, so far, not one positive call to action. There'll be a state election in 15 months. We must provide a clear alternative. Fantastic. Where is it? Here's the plan to get Victoria back on top. Great. Where is it? The facts. Labor's been in government. Like, where's the plan? Where's the plan? More shitting, more shitting, more shitting. Under no plan down. Shitting, 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 shitting. Under no plan down. Shitting, 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 shitting. So he's just introduced that, like, here's the plan, guys. We're just going to shit on the Labor Party. That's all we're going to do. Forgotten people, the battlers, the quiet Australians. What are you doing for them? Okay. Here's the plan. Provide family stability. Reduce hospital and ambulance waiting times. Like, do they not know there's a pandemic out there? Do they not know that? In all seriousness, let's talk about stability for a moment. So, this state obviously has been in and out of lockdowns. There's no denying that. What would they have done differently? So, would they have not have locked us down? Just let it rip? Is that their grand plan? How are they going to reduce hospital and ambulance waiting times when it's so obvious that ambulances, hospitals now have an extra layer of work they have to do in terms of determining COVID? Like, if someone has COVID, are they potentially spreading the virus in the hospital? Is obviously a much higher workload involved with doing that. So how are they going to do that? Ending Labor's wasteful spending. Where is that? Now, have they spent too much money? Maybe you can make that case. Like, where is that? Helping small business with the local business action plan. Like, it's all just words. All just words. Not one actual policy position here. This is just like a general outline of things we'd like to do. That's what their plan to get Victoria back to the top is all about. Here's some general things we'd like to do, guys. Not one word about how they'll do it. Not one word about what it will cost. The Liberal Party is not a party of protest. We are a party of government. I mean, so you would think then that if they're the natural party of government, as they're claiming, as is kind of like a, let's say, general vibe around the country, you would think it would be so easy for them to come up with policy positions. It would be so easy for them to tell us what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and what that will entail. I haven't seen one part of that. Not one part. Okay, so we're going to take Victoria's payroll tax on small business from the worst in the country to the best. So, what does that actually mean? Does that mean they're going to lower it? Does that mean they're going to take that money and spend it on something specific? Does that mean they're going to like reinvest that money into certain other government avenues? Like, what does that mean? So far, it means nothing. We're going to take the worst thing and make it the best thing. It's going to be beautiful. Labor's new stamp duty slug on family homes and small businesses. Now, look, I have to admit here, I don't know everything. I don't know what the new stamp duty slug is. Okay, I don't know why Victoria's payroll tax is any worse than everyone else's, but and I think that's why it's important that people like me do speak about this, is because I'm not someone that's super informed about these issues, and yet even I'm looking at what they're saying and going, well, where's the substance to any of this? Are you going to take the worst and make it the best? How are you going to do that? What is this new stamp duty? Why is it a slug on family homes? What are you going to do instead? Are you just repealing it? Are you going to put something else in instead? Why does that tax exist? Like, there are these 3 or 4 follow-up questions that I'm asking about every single one of these, and I'm not getting any answers to it. Our zero to landfill initiative will use the, like, why are these all proper nouns? It's very bizarre. Our zero to landfill initiative will use energy from waste technology to create new sources of reliable electricity. So I think what they're talking about here is like burning landfill to generate electricity. I know that other countries do that. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Um, the Western Victoria Transmission Project, 1,800 megawatts of renewable energy into our grid. Hey, sounds pretty based, actually. And this is, I guess, the other thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to significantly invest in energy infrastructure. Hell yeah, I can get behind that. 1,800 megawatts, that sounds like a lot. Renewable energy, sweet. Like, as soon as they've laid out, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan, I'm like, cool, sounds pretty good. When they're just saying these hollow, empty words, like, what? Why are we here? In order to learn the lessons from Labor's failed pandemic response, we'll institute a royal commission to seek the truth that eluded the Coate inquiry, not as a witch hunt. So it's like, it's classic, you know? New government walks in, what's the first thing they do? Investigate the old one, find any corruption, and see if they can roll some heads, make the old government look worse, you know, like, come on. So, over coming weeks and months, and in the lead up to the election, we will release more policies. Cannot wait to see them. Very excited to see them. This election will be a tough battle for us, despite the abject incompetence of Andrew's Labour. Dang. So the other guy is abjectly incompetent, and you're going to struggle against him? Jeez, that's ruthless. He's a mountain to climb. This guy is the embodiment of incompetence, and he's a mountain you have to climb over? Jeez Louise, how bad are you guys? Lordy. Absolutely laughable statements about being the party of quality public services. Like, just Google Jeff Kennett. Google Jeff Kennett privatization and talk to me about quality public services. Absolute joke. From the plumber in Point Cook, the corner store owner in Box Hill, to the professional in Hawthorn. Let's take some, what are some stereotypes we can drum up about the suburbs? Tradies? Dang, they all live in the West. Corner store owner? That's kind of like vaguely Asian. That sounds like Box Hill. But Hawthorn, the cream of the crop, the professionals all live in Hawthorn. uh, Mainstream Victorians who share our mainstream values and aspirations. So this is actually an interesting little like rhetorical point here, making the case that the Liberals and Nationals are a very like mainstream thing. Their opinion that we should just let COVID rip, don't worry about lockdowns. That's a mainstream viewpoint. Like, come on, that's a joke. In order to get Victoria back to the top, we've got to be mainstream. So it's kind of like, what's the other half of this sentence? We need to be mainstream for this election because for the last one we weren't. Is that the unsaid part? Am I saying the unsaid part out loud here? If I'm not mistaken, like the main thrust of political opposition in Victoria from the last election when Matthew Guy was running the show was all about like African crime gangs, like the least least mainstream thing in Victoria. Terrible to victims of African crime gangs, but hardly a mainstream issue. So I think actually what we can read into this is that the Victorian Liberals probably have learned something about how to win elections, and it's not by going down these kind of weird conspiracy paths. We can't make just a speech or two lobbing up in a couple of pubs in Footscray or Dandenong. Yeah. In conclusion, these are dark days for Victorians. Shit on the government. Even in lockdown, we can already see the flowers starting. Oh, God. All right, this is poetry. Hang on. I wasn't expecting this. I know that these are dark days for Victorians, but even in lockdown, we can look around and already see the flowers starting to bloom. This means that very soon it will be spring, the season of hope, the season of new life. And with that hope in my heart, I am very confident that brighter days are ahead for our for our Liberal and National parties and for our state again. Who are you first, Michael? You're a Liberal. You're a National second and you're a Victorian third. So let's together get Victoria back on top. Thank you. So hopefully that provided a little bit of insight into the crazy machinations of these guys who are pretending to be in opposition in Victoria. The next time they say something crazy, I'll be here to talk about it. So thanks. Bye.